In this tutorial, we're going to create a Twitter user class, okay? And then we're going to ask the user we're gonna create a Twitter account for that user. And then we're going to ask the user to log in, to verify their password. And then we're gonna display some information, okay? So firstly, let's specify some of the attributes of a Twitter user in this class. So we have the username, obviously, the password, and then the birthday, birth month, and birth year. So let's see which of these attributes should be a private and which should be a public. So firstly, I think that password and birth year should be private because you don't, a lot of people wouldn't be comfortable with strangers or anyone who follows them on their account to know their entire birth year because that's confidential information, right? So we're gonna declare, so private, then the user password would be a string, so private string and then password, and then private int year, okay? So these are my private attributes, and then the rest will be public. So public string as well, so string, that's username, and then public int would be my day of birth and my month of birth, so that people, this is information that can be okay, like people will be okay being shared with their friends, right? So these are my attributes that I declared so far. And so now let's go back to my main class or my driver method and let's declare a Twitter, let's initialize or create a Twitter object. So Twitter user, I'll call this object user1 equals to new and then Twitter user, okay? So right off the bat, I know that the object user1 has all these attributes: username, day, month, year, and password, okay? And as you can see, I haven't explicitly defined a constructor in my case. So let's see what these values would be. So let's say I want to print, so line, and I'm going to print username dot, let's say username. And as you can see, I only have access to the public attributes. So I don't have access to password or year. I only have access to day, month, and username. So let's say I want to print username. Okay. Now when I run this, it's going to print out a null. And the reason is because since you do not have an explicitly defined constructor, what Java does is that there's always going to be a constructor running in the background. If you didn't explicitly define one, it's going to create its own constructor and just initialize everything to its default value. And the default value of a string, which is username in this case, is null. So if I were to just do the same but with day, it would output a 0 because that's the default value of a string, okay? So let's say I don't want it to be that way. I want to create a constructor, a default constructor to be precise, okay? So the default constructor will have the same name as my class and it will not have a return type. So private public Twitter user, sorry. And then I'm going to define everything that goes on in here. So let's say my default Twitter user would be the founder of Twitter and his name is Jack. So I'm going to initialize username as @Jack, double quotes, @Jack. Password would be, it's an integer, so let's say password is a string because it could be a mix of characters and letters. So let's say I'm gonna say that this password is password because he's the CEO of Twitter and he can do whatever he wants. Now year, let's say his birthday is January 1st, 1980, okay? So the day would equal to 1, the month would equal to 1, and the year would equal to 1980. So I created my default constructor. It initializes my attributes to these values, okay? So now when I create a Twitter user object right here, so user1, it's going to be initialized using this constructor now because now I defined it. So now if I try to print out this username, it should give me @Jack. So when I run this, username gets printed out as @Jack. So let me just print out a little statement here. Your username is, and then a little here. Then I'm going to run this again, and it would tell me that my username is Jack. Okay, so it did this using my default constructor, and it got these values because they're initialized by my default constructor. Now let's say my default constructor did not initialize user. It just initialized everything else. So password, day, month, year, but didn't initialize user. The value that I would get, what do you think it would be? It would be a null because it sees here that this did not get initialized. Username did not get initialized through my constructor. So Java is going to initialize it itself by the default value, which is null. So let me just remove this comment and let it be initialized. Now let's say I want to give the user the option to create his own account, okay? So, or pass in their own information. So it's not always going to be Jack creating an account. It might be me. So I'll create another constructor, okay? But in this case, it will take in parameters. Cool? So string, and then username, underscore user. We'll take in the password as well. So string, username, password, underscore user, and then int day use, int day underscore user, int month underscore user, and int year underscore user. Okay, and now when I pass in these parameters, I'm going to use whatever parameters the user pass in to set my attributes. So username is just going to equal username underscore user. Password is going to equal, so password is going to equal password underscore user, and then int day, sorry, not int, my bad. So my day is going to equal to day underscore user, which is the argument the user passed in. Same thing for month, and same thing for year. Okay, so now I've created another constructor which initializes my attributes based on what the user passes in as arguments. So let's say here, after I created this object, now I want to create a Twitter account for me. So let's say user2 equals new, and Twitter user. Now if I leave this empty, if I don't pass in any parameters, it's still going to use my default constructor, but that's not what I want to do. I want to use this constructor. Okay, so I'm going to use this constructor. I'm going to write it out as a comment, as guidance. Okay, because I want to see what format or how many parameters this constructor takes in. Takes in 5 parameters, and in this order: username, string, password, and then I'm going to ask for the day, month, and year. So let's say my username is @Ziad. Okay, my password is let's say 1, 2, 3, 4, and then my day of birth would be, say, 25th. Then my month would be, oh, these are integers, so you don't include the quotations, my bad. So 25th, 10th for the month, and then the year, let's say the year is 2000. Okay, so right here I created a Twitter object, or Twitter user object, and I passed in these parameters. Now let's say I want to print my username. So if I do this right here, it's going to print my username as Ziad. Okay, so this step creates my Twitter account. So right here, this is creating a Twitter account for Ziad. So I used my non-default constructor in order to pass all this information in, okay? Now, let's say I want to ask user to log in and verify if passwords match, right? So first I should ask user to log in. So let's say, hello there. Do you want to log in? Yes/no. Okay. So I'm going to read input from the user. So obviously I need to import my scanner object. So import java.util and then scanner. Okay. So now I'm going to create my scanner object. So let me just do it in the beginning. So scanner and then input equals to new scanner system dot in. So now I've created my scanner object and I'm going to read my data from the user. So string response equals to input dot next line. Okay, so this reads the user's input. Now, if the user wants to log in, we should continue with the verification process. Otherwise, we want to display out a message that says, "Okay, have a good day." So let's so that would be an if condition, right? So if response equal yes, we're going to continue. But here's the thing. With Java, whenever you're creating two strings, you cannot use the equal operator. So what you should use instead is dot equals, and then here you want to have whatever you want to equate or you want to compare. So in my case, it's yes. So what this means is that if my response equals yes, I will go into my if statement, else I will not go in. So else, if the user does not want to log in, I'll just print out, okay, have a good day. Otherwise, if my user wants to log in, I will ask the user to input the password. So out, please enter your password, and then I'm going to read whatever the user inputs. So pass underscore response, so that would be a string. So that would equal to whatever the user inputs, so input dot next line, and that would be my response. So that would be my password that I input in. So I'm reading the password that the user enters using the next line, and then I'm going to store it pass response. Now, obviously, if the password is wrong, I have to let the user know, right? And if it's right, I'm going to display some information about the user, okay? So if I'm going to write pass.response dot equals, and then I want to get the user's password. So user underscore 2, and then dot, but you don't see password right here, right? Because just like I mentioned before, password is a private attribute. I can't just get it the same way I would get a public attribute. So how would I get it? The way I would get it is I would create a getter method. So public, and then password is a string. So it returns back a string, then get underscore password, and then I'm just going to return password, okay? So this method right here, whenever I call it, using the object that I created, it will return back my password, right? So now I can write user to dot, and then there's a get password method. So this method is going to return back my password, and then I can compare whatever it returns back, which is the true password, to the pass response. Now let me just store this in a variable and call it true password. So string true password equals to user2 dot get password. And let me just here use this as true password. Sorry. Okay, so I get the true password of the user using the getter method, user2.getUser. So this gets the password for user2, and then I'm going to compare the response password, or the password that the user gave me, to the true password. Okay, now let me go into my if statement. Okay, so if the passwords match, I'm going to s out correct password. Here is a cookie. Okay, otherwise I'm going to say sorry, wrong password, you're not allowed to log in. Okay, so this all happens if the user wants to log in. What if they don't want to log in? This is gonna be my else statement. Gonna be like okay, have a good day. Cool. Now let me see what this belongs to. So I'm missing another set of curly braces. Okay, so so this part right here, I'm asking the user to input their password, and I'm going to see if it's correct or not. So let me run this real quick. Okay, so do I want to log in, yes or no? So let's say I type a yes, enter a password. So my password is password. Okay, so that is an incorrect password because my password for user 2 is 1234. So let's see what it's going to show me. Wait, what's going on here? Oh, it's an indentation error. So if okay, oh, I shouldn't say okay, have a good day here. Sorry, confused. Okay, I should just type here wrong password. So my code runs just fine. I just printed the wrong message. So wrong password. Now let me rerun this. So yes, I want to log in. My password is password, which is incorrect. Now it's going to tell me wrong password, and it's going to exit the program. Now let's say I input my correct password. So yes, password 1234. It's a correct password. Here's a cookie. Okay. So let's say I want to, since the user entered their correct password, let me show them some confidential information, right? So their entire birthday, which is not available to anyone else because year is private, right? So just like I did with password, I need to create a getter method to get the year because it's it's a private attribute. So public int get underscore year, and then let me return back year. So this getter method is going to return back here just like I did with password, and since here is a private attribute, I need to access it via a getter method. So let's say here I'm going to display user's birthday. So SO, and then I'm going to write your birthday is, let me write the format, day, month, and year. Okay, so my day, I can just access it without using any methods. So day plus, let me just add a slash to make things look nice. Then user 2 dot month, so 2 dot month plus add slash plus user 2. Now when I want to get the year, I have to use the get year method that I just defined, the getter method. Okay, now let me run this. So I'm going to log in, yes, my password, 1234, then it says here's a cookie, and then it displays my password, my birthday, which is the 25th of October, the year 2000. So that was a really quick tutorial, which had just mainly involving classes, and it included some. So we had like a bunch of like if statements and else statements right here. So that should also help with your future lab and future quiz. And just watch out when you're creating strings. You can't use the equal equal operator. So write as a comment, you cannot use the equal equal operator with strings. That was a mistake I did myself when I was stuck for a while because I'm used to other languages. But whenever you're equating strings, you have to use the dot equals operator or dot equals feature or method. So that was it for today, and I hope you guys find this helpful. And maybe write your own code, play around with this, and in order to truly test yourself and see if you truly understand this. If you understand private features, public features, and then if it's a private feature, how would you get it? How would you define a getter method? How would you use it in your main function? And so on. So have a good day.